Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. This week we're going to be talking about green ground cover, and we'd like to thank SMSMTH22 for a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate the ratings and the feedback. We also want to thank Player FM for featuring us on their podcast app. Their app helps you find shows, and you can play it back even when you're not online. You can connect your app to a TV with Chromecast. You can listen on Android Wear or the Android Auto mobile app. And you can check them out at player.fm, that's player.fm, or download the app to your mobile device. And we're getting ready to submit our 14th ebook to the editor, so you'll soon be able to download it on Amazon.
Yippee.
Scientists think moss was one of the earliest true plants, and they've found fossil evidence of moss dating back around 400 million years. There are over 12,000 species of moss, and it can be found on every continent, including Antarctica. Ancient Egyptians used oak moss along with myrrh and pine resin for mummification. Green ground cover for landscape areas around your home usually refers to plants that don't grow very tall and spread out over a large area. For landscape beds around your home's foundation, most homeowners use wood mulch or stone to cover the ground around flowering plants, trees, and shrubs. The disadvantage of wood mulch is it fades over time and it breaks down. You usually have to add more mulch every year or two to keep it looking good and to keep the ground covered, which is a chore and it can be expensive over time.
Right.
If you put down too much mulch around trees and shrubs, it can cause damage to the wood stems of shrubs or the trunks of trees. Thick mulch can also cause the roots of your plants to grow up into the mulch, and that can cause damage to your plants if it dries out or if it gets too hot in the summer. Thick mulch can also reduce the amount of oxygen that gets into the soil, which is pretty wild. The roots need airflow. Wood mulch can be washed out by heavy rains or from the discharge from downspouts or sump pumps, and then weed and grass can take root as mulch breaks down and exposes the soil.
That looks bad.
Right. Stone doesn't need to be replaced like wood mulch, but it is
It does.
What do you mean?
Just not as often.
Yeah, well, sometimes it'll sink down into the soil.
Right, my parents used to have it around, their flower beds.
Okay.
And, it gets dirty and...
Yeah.
They had the white marble rock.
So they get out there and clean it?
No, we just...
Cindy, get out and clean the stone.
No, Cindy, bring home another bag of rock and just throw it over the old stuff.
So stone, you're going to replace it less, but it is very heavy and expensive when you're initially setting it up. It's difficult to spread, and it can get hot in the summer and damage roots of your landscape plants. And in hot climates, if you have this against your home, it can raise the temperature around your house. It's more work to move if you're putting in new plants in your landscape areas, and they don't add any nutrients to the soil.
Right.
So rather than mulch or stone, you can cover the soil around your plants in your landscape areas with green ground cover. If you use low-growing evergreen plants, it's going to look good throughout the seasons. And if you get ground cover that flowers in spring or fall, you're going to add more color and interest to the area. Flowering ground cover can provide food for bees and other pollinators, along with giving birds cover or a place to nest. Green ground cover can also increase the beneficial insect populations around your home for birds, toads, frogs, lizards, snakes, and bats. The roots from green ground cover releases sugars and proteins into the soil that soil microorganisms feed on. It increases the amount of microorganisms and it improves soil health. Soil microorganisms break down nutrients in the soil so plants can absorb them easier. Green ground cover is going to reduce the amount of weeds and grass in your landscape areas. It'll help regulate the soil temperature and reduce water evaporation for your other plants, shrubs, and trees. Compared to mulch, it's less of a fire risk next to your home, especially around the gas meter and flammable material on or around your house. The University of California says if you live in an area that's prone to fire, keep stone landscape material against the home out to around 5 feet, and then use green ground cover or less combustible landscape material like composted wood chips. Shredded rubber mulch, pine needles, and shredded cedar bark have the highest combustible characteristics, and they should only be used in areas more than 30 feet from your home. Many of the plants that you'd be using for green ground cover are drought resistant, and they're not going to require a lot more water than you would be doing for your other landscape plants, depending on the size of your landscape area.
Are you going to list all the names?
Yeah, it's amazing. You did so much research on these plant names, and I was looking them up phonetically because I had no idea how to pronounce them.
And I giggled when I was printing all of it.
So I just decided on tips on how to look for plants, not listing them. If you're shopping for ground cover at a nursery near your home, they're going to have plants for your part of the country, and they're also going to be able to guide you to how many plants you're going to need for the area you want to cover and the spacing between the plants.
Mm-hmm.
If you're shopping online, search for ground cover and then look for the hardiness zone for your area. These are areas across the country divided into growing zones. The warmer parts of the U.S. are roughly zones 8, 9, and 10. The cooler part of the U.S. are zones 3, 4, 5, and 6, but you want to match the plants to your zone.
Right.
Look for the sunlight required. Most plants will either be full sun, full shade, or partial shade. I was reading an article from Kansas State University, and they defined full sun as 6 or more hours of direct sunlight, full shade as an hour or less of direct sunlight, and partial shade as 2 hours or less of direct sunlight. But when I was reading labels and looking online, some of the descriptions of partial shade was 4 to 6 hours.
So it varies.
Yeah, so you're going to need to read the label.
For the plant you're buying.
Right, or the plant
Not
you're
just
comparing.
labels in general.
Well, that's fun. I enjoy that. Compare the height. Ground cover can vary a lot in the height. I was on the Burpee site, and that's burpee.com. burpee.com. Their ground cover plants ranged from 1 inch to 36 inches tall. If the plant has flowers, check the color and when it blooms. I was on the Nature Hills website, and they have the growth rate and how far each plant will spread, which is helpful when you're picking the plants and also when you're planning how many you need to purchase. And
right, because this is going to be a lot of work to plant all these.
Right, and you
don't want it to look stupid when you're done.
Right. So Nature Hills is naturehills.com. Couple other websites that have ground cover. Provenwinners.com. That's ProvenWinners.com. And thetreecenter.com. It's TheCenter.com. Online, you can see pictures of the plants and get some interesting detail. On the Burpee site, for example, they have a ground covered called a Juga chocolate chip.
You're not going to spell that?
Ajuga. They say it's a superb ground cover that takes over empty spaces with its shiny, flat, chocolate purple leaves. The plants grow densely in thick mats, especially in damp areas in dappled shade. It combines well...
That's quite a description.
Yeah, well, it gets better. It combines well with ferns, hostas, dicentras, and other shade lovers. Well, sounds like a recipe. Grows well in zones 4 through 9. It gets 3 to 4 inches tall. It blooms in spring, and it spreads out 10 to 12 inches. This will grow in full shade, full sun, or partial sun, and it's resistant to deer and rabbit.
So super cool.
Yeah, so it's a good one. On the Nature Hills website, they have something called lime zinger sedum. It's also called stone crop. They say this is perfect for beginners. It has lime green leaves edged in cherry red. It's a uniform, ground-hugging perennial plant. They say butterflies love the soft pink flowers in late summer and fall, and the colors will vary by the season. It's drought-resistant, deer-resistant, rabbit-resistant, and it adapts to most growing zones in the U.S. They say you can plant it in zone 4 through 9. It's fast-growing, and it creates a dense mat to keep out weeds. It'll get 4 to 6 inches tall, and it spreads out 6 to 8 inches wide. But it needs full sun and well-drained soil.
Well, you seem like you're very excited about this one.
It's another good one, if you have a sunny area.
All right, you said perennial. Why don't you explain what that meant?
So if you see plants that are perennials, they're going to grow back every year or every spring. Annual plants only last for one season and then they die.
Cool.
Another thing to check with ground cover plants is recommendations for the soil type, like average, dry, acidic, moist, or well-drained. You may want different types of ground cover for the front of your home if it's in full sun, for example, and another type for the back or side of your home if it's shady or you have drainage problems.
Okay.
Moss is another plant that makes an interesting ground cover. Many types of moss thrive in shady, damp areas, but there is moss that will grow in direct sunlight, and there's drought-resistant moss.
Mm-hmm.
Moss can grow in a wide range of environments and over almost any type of soil. They don't have true roots. They feed themselves through their leaves from water, air, and dust.
Spooky.
Moss comes in a variety of colors and textures, and it's an evergreen plant. It requires very little maintenance. Moss that grows in cool climates will stay green throughout winter, and drought-resistant moss will go dormant for months if there's no water available.
Wow, cool.
An article I read in the Smithsonian magazine said during World War I, doctors were running out of material for bandages for wounded soldiers because cotton was needed for uniforms, and they discovered cotton could be used in a formula for explosives.
Where is this story going?
So they needed something to cover wounds to reduce the chance of infection. A Scottish surgeon and botanist decided to try to use peat moss to pack wounds. So he found it was twice as absorbent as cotton, and it had antiseptic properties. So it turned out to be great for absorbing blood, pus, and other fluids. It helped prevent infection, and it ended up saving thousands of lives. Interesting, huh?
I wouldn't want to be the first one they tried this on.
If you're creating a new landscape bed or expanding a landscape bed, or if you plan on removing mulch or stone to plant ground cover plants, most plants are going to do better if you improve the soil by digging down 8 to 10 inches and working in organic compost. This is going to help break up clay soil so air and water flows better. If you have sandy soil, compost is going to help retain moisture and nutrients by your plant's roots. You'd lay out your main decorative plants, shrubs, or trees first, and then space your ground cover based on the recommended distance between plants. Water your plants routinely the first season to establish the roots. Most plants need about an inch worth of water a week, but check the labels.
Okay.
If you have an established landscape bed and you plan on removing mulch or stone, you can clear an area around each new ground cover plant and leave the remaining mulch or stone in place. And then as the plants expand, you can rake up a little more of the old ground cover and make room for the new plants. And this may take a few years, but it's an inexpensive way to fill in the area, and it's going to look good as the plants fill in the space.
Right. Do you have anything else to add?
I would do some research online for the types of ground cover. You can get a great feel for what the plants look like, the recommended sunlight, soil conditions, and the spacing required.
And their crazy names.
Yeah. Green ground cover is a nice option for landscape areas rather than mulch or stone.
And go bigger.
Yeah.
Then it's less you have to mow.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would increase the size of my landscape areas. Less grass to mow, less grass to fertilize and water.
Yep. Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can download our ebooks, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, books 1 through 13, and soon book 14 on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow Cindy on Twitter @FixItCohost, and you can follow us on Instagram, Fixit Home Improvement.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.